Hey guys, this is just a little message before I begin the video. I am aware of the sound of the wind and the sound of the hand grip. Firstly, I will be getting a new microphone in the future to eliminate any wind, and I will be getting a better mounting system for any future videos. I wasn't expecting there to be so much wind. Normally it isn't so bad, and it only really picked up once I got there. So I decided to carry on and hope it wouldn't be a big problem. I've cut out most of the horrible bits, but what remains is still pretty good. This video was mostly a test to test out my new equipment, and I will be adding to that in the future. I hope you enjoy. I've seen a lot of comments and things saying, how do you get into what you do? What motivates you, gives you the drive? I don't really think there is a prerequisite to get into TASing. I see a lot of, oh, what do I need to do to learn to do this? And what do I need to accomplish to start? As if there's some kind of starting point. So one thing I see is a lot of people who give suggestions is play the game, get used to the game, blah 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 blah. And yeah, that's good. You know, obviously learning the game is good, but it's a little bit more than that. Because playing the game only gives you a basic insight as to the full spectrum of things to come. For example, when you TAS, you open up a doorway to things you wouldn't normally be able to do, whether that be 30,000 inputs a second, or doing parallel universes, whatever. So when you play the game, you learn the game. That's, pretty obvious. You learn the game, how to play it, how to win, the different categories to speedrun, for example. So I guess you could call playing the game speedrunning. You have your very basic glitches and things you can do as a human. But what I am interested in learning when I TAS is things that you can't do as a human. Whether that be happening to push a button 30 times in 2 seconds or whatever. So learning all those cool little things is great, but that's not really what makes it. So I get asked, how did you get into it? How did you get into TASing? And for me, I had a bit of a gateway with speedrunning. I played Super Mario 64. I tried to stream for a while, but I don't really have a lot of internet out here. I mean, I'm a little bit rural, so we have pretty poor internet as it is, let alone when we have things like, for example, last night we had a storm, blew up our internet modem, so I'm going to be without Wi-Fi for a little while. But, I started off with speedrunning. I followed a few guys. They got me into Super Mario 64, which was a game I loved as a kid. And I kind of learned as they ran when they ran, compared myself to them. Yeah, it gets to a point where you just find something you want to do. You don't just choose something you want to do. To me, you have to find it. You look at something and you go, yeah, I want to do that, or no one's done this before. But those are all things, all reasons to do it, and once you see that and it clicks, then you start doing it, and that's when it happens. But before that, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters as to what your reason is. Okay, I see people who go, oh, I want to TAS this because it hasn't been done. And I think that's a great reason. Go off and do it. There's no one, you don't need anyone's permission, or anyone's acceptance. You just kind of go out and do it. But, I still see a lot of people who start things, and I'm no exception to this. I've had times where I start things, I'm like, yes, I want to do this, but then it just doesn't happen. And a lot of the time that's just because it wasn't your kind of game. You start it and you realize there's a lot of things that you could have done better. It might not be a game with certain things you were hoping, like glitches or exploits, or there's just no game that suits your criteria, which is a lot kind of under the category. That's kind of the category I fall under. I don't have any games out there that I find of my interest that I want to do. But you just kind of decide that's what you want and you go do it. So kind of recapping what I said, it's getting asked how do you start, what do you need to do to start. Just do it, okay? It doesn't matter what you do, you just kind of got to do it. So just play the game normally, casually, maybe learn to speedrun it if you're really into it, because speedrunning often has some great insight as to basic TASing things. For example, in SM64, it would be things like BLJs, basic castle movement, things of that sort. But then, once you've done that, and you've learned the game inside and out, you've learned all the tricks and, all the things that are really important, Then you move into TASing, and then all I can say is just play around with it. Get a feel for the tool, get a feel for the environment, because every game is different. I remember when I started TASing, I couldn't even make Mario run straight. Now it's a piece of cake, but it's just, you got to get out there and do it. It comes under two flavors. You go out there and you just play the game in your TASing tool, and then there's also the other side of things, which is you go out and learn the things that are really technical about the game, whether that be reading source code or, getting people to explain to you things like parallel universes, which is a nightmare and a half to do. But, parallel universes would never have happened if people hadn't have gone through the game's code. And without that, Super Mario 64, for example, would never be where it is. Similarly, another game of that sort, same caliber, would be Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, with its, almost end of game warp. I don't really know the name of it. It's not my my game of choice. But some games, whether it be arbitrary code execution, another good one. Beating a game in a few seconds, spamming a button 3,000 times a second, and triggering an end of game glitch. They're all things that are caused by people who go through the code and just rip the game apart in a similar way to just playing the game. Which is why they're both so important, because it's like the difference between watching a movie and reading a book. Reading a book, you have all those little details, and you get to think of it in your own little way. You get to rip apart the details. Whereas a movie, it shows it to you in black and white. You don't always notice those details because they're not directly in front of you. You have the code, you have that little information that you can work with, and you can say, if I do this, this, and this, then this happens, and oh wow, we can do this in a much simpler way. But, in the game, you can't see that. It's like if I was to say, here's the reason, if I show you the source code for Super Mario 64 and say, here's the reason that you can PU, and then I show you the game and say, PU, but don't look at the source code, then one of those people will have a fun time and the other person won't. Because one person will say, yeah, this is why you can PU, and the other person goes, I would take forever to discover a parallel universe. It was unknown for a long time, and it just takes those two flavors to really pull the game apart and construct a TAS. And that's why I say just do it. Because if you don't just do it, you'll never truly discover what you want to get into. No one starts off perfect. No one is good when they start new things. You look at all those good speedrunners and tool-assisted speedrunners of any game, and they all started off asking the same questions. Where do I start? How do I learn? Blah blah blah. Some of them took the initiative to do it themselves, and they kind of just went off and started playing with the tools. They did exactly what I said. You just do it, and it might be 2 months later, it might be 6 years later, but now they're the best of the best. And some of them got into more complicated stuff. You got people who have a legitimate background in computer science. For example, if you watched AGDQ or SGDQ and you know the TAS block, then you probably know that the guys over there are really, really smart. And, having a background in computer science is obviously going to help in one of those areas of TASing. Whereas someone like myself, who isn't too strong in programming and computer science, I would struggle miserably to understand exactly how things happen in that sense. So I am strictly almost that first flavor. I get in the game and I kind of know what to look for when it comes down to, I guess, glitch hunting. And I kind of just throw two things together and find out what happens. But, sometimes it's 3 or 4 things, depending on the game. And some games I don't find anything, other games I find quite interesting things. Whether it would be an out of bounds or, crashing the game. It was only recently I started playing a fairly new game on the PS4, and I looked at a wall and I said, you know, there's a lot of geometry here, and I know a little bit about animation and hitbox collision, and I've obviously played the game for a little while, so I've got a better sense for that game's interactivity with objects. And I knew if I go and do a certain technique followed by another certain technique, I could get behind that wall. And in about 10-20 minutes I got behind the wall, and then I went on YouTube and figured out someone already found that. But either way, you know, it's just, you just do it. And you know, I was exactly the same when I started Super Mario 64. When I started speedrunning, I learned, you know, BLJ, for example, and I started TASing. I wasn't good at TASing, but I went into BOB, went on an elevator, BLJ'd, and I got behind the chain chomp star, and I was like, I wonder what happens if I just spam the A button, and I just BLJ as much as I can. And I ended up going outside the world into what I now know as a PU, and I was like, oh wow, what is this cool, new outside of glitch, whatever, you know? And I uploaded a video, and I got the attention of some TASers. I got the attention of Nis, and Nis invited me to a Skype group of other TASers back in the day, and that's how I got into TASing. That's how I met the other community members. But you know, you just gotta go out there and just do it. It's like with anything in life, whether it's me and my vlogs, which I'm trying to get more out. I'm going to start thinking about doing other things outside of TASing as well. But you know, you just got to go out there and do things. Figure out the different areas of ways to do it. In this example of TASing, it's you can either just go out and do the more three-dimensional, I guess, way of doing it. You just play the game in the tools you've got, and you see what you can do with those tools. You know, it's like when you want to draw a picture. You need a piece of paper, and you need coloured pencils, you need pens, you know, all the rest of it. And yeah, that's the one side of it. You just play with those tools, get used to them, and then once you've got used to them, you make an art piece. Or you can look at, you know, art theory. You know, what colours match? How does a face look? What particular art style are you interested in learning? And what is the real aesthetics of that style? And once you learn a little bit from everywhere, you create a wonderful, magnificent art piece. If you want to get from destination A to destination B, then you've got to take that first step. And you might not think that first step's going to get you very far, but to get to the second step, you've got to take that first step. It's not often you can just jump steps. I'm no exception. I've got things in TASing I want to accomplish. I've got things in real life I want to accomplish. And this is one step for me. Just doing things, getting used to my equipment. This isn't even the channel I'm going to put these kind of videos in the future. Like if I start doing normal vlogs of my daily life or things I do with friends or whatever, then they're going to go onto my other channel, which is currently called Pengu Talk, but I'm thinking about rebranding it to be something else, change it up a bit, but you know, build up that community. But no one just does things straight away and be perfect at them. You gotta take your time, you gotta get good, you just gotta, you know, seek help where you can. Ask questions, find answers. Don't be afraid to just try it, take your time. Nothing happens straight away. I know a lot of people who start TASing give up because they can't compare to people like Plush or, you know, Nis, myself being the shitty TASer that I am. And you can't compare yourself to someone else because I've been TASing for 2 years now, I think. Other people have been TASing for 10 years or something crazy, depending on the game. So you got to take your time to get to that level, and you will get there a lot quicker because the more people you have to teach you, the faster you can get there because you got more knowledge than we do. I had it lucky in that sense. I had 2 or 3 people who were happy to teach me different things, but those people had it harder to learn because they didn't have as many people to teach them because they were the ones who had to invent it. They invented those techniques and those rules, the axioms of TAS, if you will. For example, I started TASing, and in Super Mario 64, if you're travelling in a straight line, how do you get there as fast as you can? seeing it's a big distance. I now know, you know, jump dive and then butt slide all the way. Back then it was just long jump, long jump, long jump, long jump. But people like Pannon decided, here's a video comparing every movement. This one's fastest, this one's second fastest, so on and so forth. And depending on your situation, depends on which techniques you have to choose from, even though one might be slower than the other. Don't feel afraid. Go out and do things. I'm TimeTravelPenguin, and you know, I've been playing around with my GoPro. I'm actually going to get a proper camera as well. I've got 2 for what I want to do. Going to save up for some other equipment and things, and hopefully start making more videos. I've got plenty of opportunity to work with. I got, you know, all this bloody water, some great scenery. You know, there's no limits to what I can do, really. I'm not that far from the city, my closest city, so that's not really a problem either if I want to do stuff more up there. So yeah, obviously if you're here, you know I'm a TASer, and if you've watched this far, then you're possibly more interested in these vlogs than I thought you would be. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you later.